Talking with the experts.
Welcome to Talking with the Experts, where we believe that success is a journey, and every journey is easier with help from friends. That's why we bring you top-notch experts and real business heroes eager to share their lessons from the road to success. We delve into new topics each week: effective marketing strategies, innovative problem solving, financial planning, and team building. We tackle everything you need to know to grow your business and keep it thriving. Whether you dream about launching your first startup or a business veteran looking to shake things up, we've got you covered. With each episode, you'll gain knowledge, boost your confidence, and be inspired to take action. So, grab a coffee, make yourself comfortable, and join our exciting journey. You're not alone in this. We're here, guiding you, cheering for you, and celebrating each milestone. Let's turn your business dreams into reality, starting today. Here is your host, Rose Davidson.
Talking with the experts.
Learn how business owners can strengthen their mindset to help them break through plateaus with Paul Aucoin in episode 480.
We blame, and we blame so we can get off the hook. That's why we blame. That's not my job. You go deal with somebody else. I can't help you. Not my problem. So you try to get yourself off the hook. But what ends up happening, as soon as you do that, as soon as you blame somebody else, you're frustrated, and you've left yourself feeling frustrated and angry and upset, and so you're actually the loser when you try to blame someone. And the reason why this is a business skill is because with business owners, the buck stops with the business owner. It has to. And if you're blaming your employees or blaming your suppliers, blaming the market, blaming the government, blaming the competition, then your business isn't going to do as well as if you say, okay, this is what my competitor's doing. Okay, this is what the government's doing. I need to react.
Talking with the experts.
Hello and welcome to Talking with the Experts. I'm your host, Rose Davidson from rosedavidson.com. Talking with the Experts is all about business by business owners for business owners. You can find it on all good podcasting streaming platforms and on YouTube. Today, my guest is Paul Aucoin. Hopefully I'm saying that right. I didn't ask him before we started. And Paul is going to be discussing with us how businesses can grow in a linear way. And we all have those ups and we all have those downs, and then we all have those plateaus. But once we break through that plateau, we can all experience, a cycle of ups and downs and plateaus. But we're trying to get over the plateaus, basically. So Paul's going to be talking to us about that. And Paul, just let me tell you a little bit about Paul, because he's very intriguing, and you're going to love his voice. He's got perfect voice for radio. Absolutely. Paul started his business in the basement of his house and grew it to 23 employees and $15 million in sales in 16 years, and then he sold it. He's the author of Bulletproof Your Mindset, Think Like a Business Owner, which is sold wherever good books are sold. He is educated as an electrical engineer, so if you don't understand what his language is, then, because I know engineers have a certain language all their own. Paul, it's a great pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you very much for having me. I'm excited to talk with you.
Lovely. So am I. Yeah, I'll get you talking a bit more because I just want to listen to your voice.
All right.
Now, Paul, tell me, you started your business in your basement.
Yes.
What prompted you to start this business and then sell it?
I was in the HVAC, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning technical sales role for the beginning of my career after I graduated from university. And I did that in a couple of different locations across Canada. And then I got to a point where I wanted to take over somebody's job who wasn't leaving. And so I needed to find my own company to start. And I was fortunate to make a connection with a large manufacturer who had enough confidence in me to be able to sell their product. And so I took that and I ran with that. And as you mentioned, I started from the basement of my house, and that's how it all started. And basically, as I'll mention, and my book is about mindset, but one of the key things that happens in business that we may not think is a key thing, we think it might be a problem. It's actually when you start getting frustrated. That's a really good thing, because that means you're not willing to put up with what's going on.
Absolutely, yes. Mindset is almost everything in business. If you don't have the right mindset, you shouldn't be in business, I don't think. And you need to change and be able to weather those ups, downs, and plateaus, especially the plateaus. I think they can be quite frustrating.
Yes, absolutely. I became a professional development learner. I was a Toastmaster. I was part of our Chamber of Commerce, and I met some people that were also very interested in their professional development early in my career. And so I spent a lot of time learning. And one of the key thing that really made me realize I was thinking like somebody else, thinking the mindset that I was developing was different than most other people, was the mindset of taking responsibility. And it started off by, after doing some learning about taking responsibility, what that involved was basically that I wasn't allowed to blame anybody anymore for anything. And I found that very difficult. I had, like, one of the simplest examples was I had a colleague that would give me a hard time about coming in later than him. He was an early riser. I was a late riser. He put in an 8-hour day. I was putting in a 12-hour day, but I got there an hour after he did. And it got to me. He poked me, and I was frustrated with that, and I was angry with him. Other than that, he was a really good guy. And I realized that after reading more about taking responsibility, that I needed to take responsibility for that situation. I couldn't blame him. I needed to, and often when you are upset with something or you're frustrated with something, somebody says something and maybe you take offense to it, there's usually a little string of truth to it. So the string of truth was I was coming in late, and I was a little embarrassed that I was coming in later than him. So that's why I was a little offended and a little frustrated. When I learned to take responsibility, I was like, okay, I can't let this bother me anymore. And I changed my mindset, and I was able to make it go away within 3 weeks. And I was off to the races. And that was a very small thing, but that kind of example, that happens to all of us. So we can all kind of relate that, yeah, somebody gets on your nerves. Do you really, if you let them control how you feel, then they're in control. You're not in control. You're giving them control. You're letting them. And that happens as soon as you start blaming. And so that the whole idea of taking responsibility, I realized was, okay, my boss is not giving me these great clients that I want. I'm upset with him. I'm frustrated with him. And then I realized, no, you need to take responsibility for that. You need to prove that you can do as good or better of a job than he's doing. You have to believe he's thinking good things for you and change your mindset. So I developed an acronym, is basically what I ended up doing, because these things kept coming up in different ways. And so I developed my own acronym that I tested over the next 20 years. So that was the and along the road, I realized that blame and frustration always went together. And I was learning that, but then it got solidified in a book that I read, is that these two things always go together. So that was new for me. I was like, okay, is that really happening? Is that, whenever I'm frustrated, I'm blaming something? And, some simple examples, somebody cuts you off in the car when you're traveling to work. That's a simple one, right? You're clearly blaming them. You're upset, But what we're missing out on is that person is actually controlling our emotion. That person's driven off. They're gone. They're long gone. You're still upset. And one of the things that really helped me as a very competitive person that wanted to eventually own my own business, and I was always striving, was that I was the loser of that interaction. They were the winner. I was the loser. So not only was I upset and frustrated, and it was spoiling part of my day, I was the loser on top of that. So I was like, oh my God, I can't let this happen. I have to be the winner. And how do I win? Well, now I have to not let them bother me. So how do I do that? Then I have to imagine what good intent that person could have had and why they cut you off. Even if it doesn't matter if it's real or not, if it's just a matter if it settles your mindset. And if you want to believe that it's your grandmother that's driving and she's trying to, she's lost and she's worried or concerned or something, and that's who it is that cuts you off. And so you're not going to get upset with your grandmother and you just say, okay, you know what, she's going to go. Or somebody that's on their way to the hospital, or somebody who's their first day of work, and if they're late, they're going to get fired or something. And like whatever situation, you have to fool yourself to allow yourself to gain back control of your mindset, your emotions, so you can better think how to solve problems.
Yeah, makes perfect sense, Paul. It makes perfect sense. Now,
Mm-hmm.
going back a step, what's this lovely acronym that you've invented that gets you through the day?
So ABC, I figured that would be pretty memorable. Easy. So A is for anger, B is for blame, and those two always go together. And C is for control, or taking control. So that's the plan, is you're going to take back control. So you're either going to notice that you're blaming, or you're going to notice that you're frustrated or angry. So as soon as you notice one of those two things, then you're like, oh, I'm in this, I'm at this point where I'm now going to start losing control of this situation. So it's you recognize it. And then the last part of the acronyms, ABC1, and I use ABC1. One actually stands for intent. I was going to use I, but I used one because it was more memorable. Is that imagine that somebody has good intent. No matter what the situation, there's good intent attached to that. So you're in your career, something bad happens at work. A client calls you up and says, you didn't get that job. Somebody else's price was lower. And you do a little research and you find out that your price was actually low. And so now you can do what? You can blame the client, right? You can blame, get frustrated, get angry. Well, my price was low. How dare they do that? Or you can say, okay, is it possible this person had good intent? Because maybe they're not such a bad person. They just they didn't give you that order, or whatever it is. Is it possible? You say, well, actually, maybe they just didn't want to tell me the truth, which was, I'm good friends with that other person and I don't mind paying more money for them. Or, what you really want to do is you want to say, okay, I want to get to the point where I'm the person he's lying for to my competitor. I want him to buy my stuff when it's more expensive than somebody else. That's what you want. You want those people that will stand by you, and always taking responsibility at those most frustrating moments, and walking through that acronym, if that acronym helps you, and finding how can this person possibly have good intent. And the book gets into a large variety of scenarios of how we can do that.
Yeah, I think stopping the blame game and actually settling into what is making you angry at the time, because why you're feeling angry, because no one can make you feel something that you don't own. So and we're all guilty of it. I mean, we all step into the fight or flight mode. We all step into the I'm offended by this thing and I'll get angry, but it's not. It's your own perceptions, really, isn't it? That is
Really
causing those feelings. It's not what the other. I mean, the other person has done something to offend you. I'm not saying that they haven't, but how you deal with it and how you feel about it is totally your responsibility.
It is. It is. And we blame so we can get off the hook. That's why we blame. That's not my job. You go deal with somebody else. I can't help you. Not my problem. So you try to get yourself off the hook. But what ends up happening, as soon as you do that, as soon as you blame somebody else, you're frustrated and you've left yourself feeling frustrated and angry and upset. And so you're actually the loser when you try to blame someone. And the reason why this is a business skill is because with business owners, the buck stops with the business owner. It has to. And if you're blaming your employees or blaming your suppliers, blaming the market, blaming the government, blaming the competition, then your business isn't going to do as well as if you say, okay, this is what my competitor's doing. Okay, this is what the government's doing. I need to react. Not only I have to react, all my competitors need to react. So I'm going to take responsibility. And yes, it's a little frustrating, but that means I need to go do something. And so that's why it doesn't seem like it's a business skill. It really feels like a soft skill. And it is a soft skill to a certain point, but when you embrace your feelings of frustration, that's when you hit those plateaus and you burst through those plateaus. That's how you get past them, is by actively figuring out what you're going to do to get past it without being angry and blaming somebody else in the meantime.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Now you're a certified DISC person.
Yes.
And so you are, motivational and intelligence assessments. It's,
Yes.
you are certified in that. How can we use the DISC process in our businesses?
Oh, it's so valuable. And when I first learned it early on in my sales career, and then the reason I got involved with it is because my first career job, they actually tested me and they tested other people in our class. So I was aware of it early on in my career. But I also, one of the best things that happened to me was I knew enough about it when I met my wife. And I knew enough to recognize her style. Her style was more of a D style, a dominant style. That was part of how she communicates. And basically that is like a, no nonsense, tell you direct type of person, as opposed to somebody that, is careful with what they say. They don't want to hurt your feelings. They don't mind being more direct. And I was like, wow, she's really direct. And I was like, oh yeah, okay, that's who she is. And that's not who I am. But because I knew what went with that. So there's the key thing about learning the DISC, the different styles, is to know is if you can pick up a couple of things about that person and you figure who they are, then you can say, okay, this person is an extrovert. I can expect them to be outgoing. And the person that's very, very extroverted and really, really good with people, that, the life of the party, that person is really lousy with details, And they're bad listeners. They are. That's just who they are. That's it, depending on how far off the middle, like there's levels of that person who's very extroverted, right? We all know somebody who's a little bit, and we all know somebody who's a lot. That person who's a lot, poor listener and really bad with details. So now you've met this person and you've got to know them. You're past the honeymoon stage of your friendship. And you're like, wow, that person forgot this and they didn't do that. And, they didn't listen to what I said. And you're like, oh, yeah, that's who they are. Okay. I know when I'm communicating with this super extrovert that I need to say, hey, stop for a second. Listen to me. And they're like, oh, okay. And it's also, so those types of people too, those really hard extroverts, you can't really offend them by saying things like that to them, because people have been saying those things to them their whole lives. And so that's the super extrovert. And then if you talk about the, very much the introverted person, well, if you know you're dealing with somebody that's very introverted and they don't say anything to you, but you recognize the clues, you can see, oh, I think they're introverted. Then you may need to say, hey, I can see you're processing what I just said. What do you think of that? Instead of being offended and, oh, I don't know what they're thinking, they're probably thinking this and that. Just, recognizing the styles, and that's part of how you can, getting back to the acronym, that's one of those big things about managing the good intent. How can this person, this super extrovert, this super introvert, or whoever, or somebody who's really, really people-oriented, very motherly, caring person, well, you're not going to change them. So if you understand enough about styles, you can say, oh, their good intent is just because that's who they are. Me being the more, whoever learns these things, me being the more enlightened person that understands styles better than they do, it's my job, my responsibility to draw them out. Let me ask the right question to them. Say, hey, it doesn't sound, so the person's a very people pleaser that would never want to offend anybody. You say, yeah, we're talking about this. I'd really like to hear your opinion, more about that. I mean, you could even preface your statement by saying you haven't thought it all the way through, or, I hope this doesn't offend anybody. I'm just trying to put my thoughts together still. And be the conduit, be the person that helps others be better communicators.
Yeah, it's a great skill to have, because that way you can, as the leader of a team, you would know how to interact with each member of the team, and in the style that they're accustomed to, and that's always of great benefit, always.
Right, absolutely.
Now, Paul, I'd like to touch on your book a little bit, Bulletproof Your Mindset and Think Like a Business Owner. Where can people find the book?
Anywhere they buy books, they should find it. If you, my author name is Paul Aucoin, and the last name you might need to look in the show notes to see the spelling, but it's Aucoin, Paul Campbell, like the soup. And my website is www.paulaucoin.com, and you'll find my book there as well. And it's also on Audible, and it is me that did the narration for it. And yeah, that was fun to do that. And the audio recording is also on all the Audible services, pretty sure.
Yeah, and what could people expect to find in the book, Paul?
Certainly, there is a couple, or one solid chapter on DISC, on personality styles. The acronym is part, understanding more about being frustrated and angry. You mentioned the fight or flight, that's in the book, and it talks about how your amygdala can get hijacked. That's now been proven through brain scans, is that when you actually get frustrated, it bypasses your neocortex to the primitive brain, the amygdala, and which allows you to act more quickly. And we've heard stories about people picking up things that are extremely heavy that otherwise they'd never be able to do. So it's basically the amygdala brings everything to get you out of the way, or to fight or to flight. But when there's no obvious threat, your brain gets hijacked. And so now you're not able to think clearly, which is part of the ABC1, why you want to be in control, why you don't want to let yourself get angry. And if it does happen, you can actually stay in that hijack for about 4 hours. And we all know when we walked into our boss's office or whoever, to see them, and we could see they were angry. We know, don't. This is not the time. Go out and, come back and see if are you feeling better now? Okay, now we can talk, because we know they're going to react quickly, without thinking. This is exactly what happens in a hijack mode, and you don't want it yourself to get hijacked. So that's certainly part of it. I talk about my big mistake that I made, and that almost caused me to lose the entire business. And a few other ideas. It's not a very long book. It's 166 pages, I think. It's about a 4.5 hour listen on Audible or wherever you want. But I felt like that was enough to get these ideas across.
Sounds like it's a really interesting book to have on the bookshelf and to be read over and over again. I wanted to touch on something else that you're doing, and you are one of 3 founders of the Shark Energy Systems.
Yes.
Provide heat exchange for raw sewage systems. How did you get into that, and why that particular avenue of engineering?
Yeah. Well, yeah, thanks for asking about that. That's myself and 2 other people. One person in particular had seen this technology or something close to it, but it wasn't doing as good a job. What ends up happening, as you can imagine, you take raw sewage. So the idea of taking raw sewage and that is 20 degrees Celsius or 70 degrees Fahrenheit, and right now we're dumping that all down the drain. So that's the average temperature, like when you take into account your dishwasher and your showers and your toilets and all that. And there's quite a bit of water that comes from residential applications for sure. And so we're dumping all of that, but it's not a new idea to run it through a heat exchanger. But what has happened in the past for the last 50 years that they've tried to do it is the heat exchangers get clogged. Because the more efficient the heat exchanger, you want to keep the plates closer and closer to get better and better heat transfer. So you can imagine you've now got raw sewage going through there. It's easy for things to get clogged up. So the trick was to develop a heat exchanger and a system that where this won't happen. And so that was what myself and my 2 partners developed. And actually, I believe there's a system in Australia. I believe there's one at least one in England. I think there's a couple in England. There's a few in the United States, a few in Canada. Actually, there's more than a few in Canada. There's probably about 20 or so now. But this technology, the thing that's like, it sounds like such a simple idea and a good idea, but the problem ends up being is that the challenge is for the mechanical designers to now have to tie into the sewage lines, which they generally don't like to do. They would rather just have it flow down. So the technology really needs the people at the higher levels, the government levels, the architectural levels, the developer levels to say, you know what, I want this in my building, and ask for it. And I think it's going to be a normal thing. It might take 20 years for people to realize that it just makes sense. You've got all of this beautiful temperature water for heat exchange, because you can use it to reject. You can either pull heat from it, or you can put heat back into it if you're cooling or if you're heating. It's just it's a perfect temperature for heat exchange.
Wow, sounds really interesting, and I think you're right. It could help with a lot of things and take away a lot of our carbon footprint in the world.
Absolutely.
Paul, you've told us where people can find you. Where else can people find you other than your website?
Mostly on my website. I'm on LinkedIn. You'll find me there. I get a reasonable presence there. I'm on there fairly often, and I also, part of my business that is on my website, I do a monthly consult with business owners. So I have I have a number of clients that I meet with. I meet with them for about an hour and a half a month. And that's usually enough information and exchange with a business owner to really give them enough to work with over the next month. And then we touch base again. We go through how things are going. My first session is always free with them. The calendar is set up on my website to do that. And I've consulted with so many different types of companies. I'm usually able to consult with just about any type of company. But that's the best place to find me.
Excellent. That's wonderful. Paul, it has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing with us today.
Thank you.
I've actually learned something. So
Excellent.
that's what I like about these exchanges, is that I get to learn something.
Excellent. Great.
All
Me
right.
too. Thank you very much, Rose.
All right. You have a good one. Bye-bye.
Have a good day. All right. Bye-bye.
Hi, I'm Rose Davidson from Talking with the Experts. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Global Glamping Charities for their valued support. Global Glamping Charities, solving homelessness in all its forms. Reach out to them at globalglamping.org.
You've been listening to Talking with the Experts, hosted by Rose Davidson. Make sure you have a look at our back catalogue over at talkingwiththeexperts.com. And be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss out on any episode. We look forward to your company next time. Talking with the Experts.